You're listening to The Disconnect, a podcast about anxiety and how it disconnects you from your normal self. We're here to share our journey and help you through yours to show you you're not alone. And now, your hosts, Austin Grant and Lindsay Jones. Welcome to episode 13 of The Disconnect. For those who have been following along with us, welcome back. If you're just tuning in for the first time, we're so glad that you're listening. In our most recent episode, we talked about decision fatigue and how we've both dealt with it and how it's affected our lives more recently. Today, we're going to address, I guess, the elephant in everybody's room. Is how we're handling these stressful times, during the pandemic and social distancing and staying at home all the time. And so, um, I mean, I think you'd agree. I mean, these last couple of weeks have brought some new challenges to how we record, and we've had to change some things up, which is why we're kind of getting this episode to you guys a little bit later than usual. But I think with these new challenges, it kind of allows us to grow and learn other ways to record and still produce content. And so it's pretty exciting to kind of learn new ways to record.
Oh yeah, I mean, like you were saying, like this is the second time we've had to record this because the first time was less than stellar. But just like in terms of having to think outside the box, I think that's one of the positives that's coming out of this whole quarantine situation is that we're having to come up with new and ingenious ways to do certain things that normally like we'd meet up and record this episode and have it out on time because with all of our stuff is set up in one particular spot and like right now because we can't be in the same room we have to figure out how to do this remote. And so thinking creatively and going outside of the comfort zone box that we live in every day, while it's not an ideal reason, of course, to be thinking outside the box, I think it's important to look at the silver lining because now with the software that we're using now to record remotely, we can have, we've kind of solved our issue of how do we have guests on the podcast? How do we have more people on the podcast other than just us two? So I think it's kind of important to look at like the silver linings of this whole quarantine mess that we're in.
All right, so let's just jump into it. So, COVID-19, fun stuff. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not stressed and 10 being full-blown panic, where would you say you're at? Like on any given day?
I mean, it definitely varies. So like some days I'll be fine. I'll be like at a 3 or a 4. Or like even a 2. Like I've gotten to a point where I can go through certain times of the day and almost forget that it's happening, I guess. Which like it sounds really awful, but like I think just for my own sanity, I kind of have to be that way sometimes. And so like with that, there are other times where I'm definitely at like a 7 or an 8, like pretty high up there on the anxiety scale of like, is the world ever going to go back to the way it used to be? What does society look like after everything is all said and done? And so, um, but I think like a majority of the time I'm at that like 4 or 5 kind of level, I think on average, I would say. How about you?
Honestly, I've done pretty well, with managing it all. Like normally in times like this, I'd find myself a little bit more stressed out or just a little bit more panicked or on edge. like if this were to happen like 6, 7, 8 months ago, or towards the end of the summer last year, I mean, this would be a completely different ball game for me, like internally and mentally, physically, and emotionally. And so, like it's kind of caused me to like kind of sit back and reflect kind of on how far I've come during that time and how far I've grown. And yeah, I mean, I think it's like all those types of things that I've done the last 6, 7, 8 months. The journaling in the morning, getting more in touch with my spiritual side, and like um, really kind of spending that time, um, establishing my morning routines and focusing on my meditation apps and things like that, and really kind of pressing into that and doing like actually practicing self care, not just talking about it. And um, like I think, now looking back in terms of how like I've been able to kind of maintain composure and stuff during these crazy times is because of what I've done. And I mean, obviously, I credit a lot of that to how much I've grown spiritually and things like that the last couple months. And it's been interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, I'd say, you know, on average, I'm at that 3 or 4, maybe 4 or 5, but never really above that, which is super nice. Um, and I kind of, I'd like to be able to help people, like kind of stay calm during these times, because it's all, like everybody can be so reactive, and if someone's panicked, then it's likely to spread like wildfire, or have like a domino effect. And so trying to kind of maintain composure and keep that positivity, kind of not necessarily positivity, but just keeping calm during this chaotic time. And yeah, I've been just kind of pressing into that, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Well, I think like we were kind of talking a little bit before we started recording here, and we'd mentioned like consistency is key in in certain things, and I think that that is really obvious and really apparent in the stuff that you've been doing, like the consistency that you have had with sticking with your journaling, and and leaning more into that religious aspect of your life, and just maintaining um that routine of what you're doing to maintain your mental health. I think that that's really, really good to remember. And I think like, especially right now, it's like the entire world. If you think about like everybody's life as a snow globe, like the entire world's snow globe has been shaken pretty hard with everything that's happening. And I think like maintaining some sort of normalcy in your life is really important right now, like maintaining that routine, like even if it's as basic as like you get up and you make your bed every day, like something that is consistent that you can kind of hold on to while everything seems like it's absolutely insane right now, which it is. Like I've never lived through anything like this. Like I've talked to people who are older than myself, and they're like, I've never seen a global reaction like this before. And I think it's just important to have those routines and to stick with those routines, especially right now, and to just make sure to remind yourself that like this will end eventually. Like we'll get there. It won't be tomorrow, and it might not be in a month, but 6 months down the line, we're probably going to get to a place where we can kind of start talking about what things look like after everything has happened. And I think just kind of holding on to the fact that this will end and things will get better. Like this isn't like a permanent state of being. Like there's no way that this is going to be permanent, um, unless I'm horrendously wrong for some reason. But um, just maintaining that routine, and I think for me that's something that I've tried to add back into my life, because I feel like I kind of lost that at the beginning of everything. Like we moved so quickly to pivoting to working from home and like making sure that you have enough to eat if you have to stay home for an extended period of time, and just making sure that you have everything that you need, and really just kind of prepping for everything is definitely out of the ordinary, at least for me. Like, I do, some stuff. I do make sure that, like, if the if the electricity were to go out, I make sure that I have you know, enough blankets to make sure we're warm, and I, make sure that we have all this stuff. But like, we had to pivot pretty hard and pretty fast to adjust for everything that happened. And so I personally kind of let routine fall by the wayside, and that I definitely felt that mentally, because like I started to panic. Like, everything was changing so fast, and I do not do well with change. Um, unless it's like very well planned and I understand like the reason behind it and everything. Um, and so like it felt so that everything was happening so fast that I kind of lost my own routine, and I definitely felt dragged down by that. So I have had to go back and add some more routine to my life. Um, and to just make sure that like I am taking care of my mental health. Like, I took Monday off of work because like I just needed like a day to just like take care of myself. And that's another important thing to realize is like, yeah, you might be home all the time and that's kind of like your safe space, but for those of us who are working from home, or for those of us who, might have a loss of income or something like that happening right now, and all the uncertainty that's happening, you need some kind of routine so that you can have that certainty in your life, in even just the smallest of ways.
Well, yeah, the routine, the routine piece is key. Like I've had to maintain, like when we were still working in person and everything. Like I'd established a pretty good morning routine. I was waking up at 5, and I was, going to the gym and starting my morning off great and everything. And then, in a matter of weeks, like our routine was completely changed upside down. And um I think the biggest piece, kind of like you said, like, with the routine, it's important to just kind of have that normalcy in your life, and not fall into like a pit, so to speak. But also in the sense of, something like we what we posted on Instagram, for those of you that follow us, um, today. It's, remember that this is all temporary. So like you'd mentioned, it will pass. We don't know how long. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know where we're going to be or what's going to happen between now and then, but it will pass. Um, and so I think the biggest piece to the routine is, this is something that's temporary. And so if you just think, okay, I'm not having to physically go into work, or if it's a matter of, like, regardless of the situation, whether you're loss of income or reduced hours or just completely working from home, like we are, I think, like for me, if I were to just stay up late every night, not get much sleep, and then wake up and just, sluggishly work through the day and everything, then it's just going to make it that much harder to fall back into a routine when I have to, when this does pass, and when we do enter, or when we do go back to work, and when we do go back to our lives. And I think to kind of, one, take care of yourself now, to set yourself up for productivity and success, and not going stir crazy, establishing that routine of similar to what you would do on a normal day. You wake up, you make your bed, you get dressed, you take your shower, and you're not just chilling in your pajamas all day. And and so, like, that way, you know not necessarily when the wake up call comes, but when we're able to go back out and do the normal things and carry on with our lives, it's not like a complete, like, culture shock of, like, oh, I've been digging myself in this hole of laziness, or just falling down this path, and it's going to be that much harder to pull yourself back up from, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Oh no, absolutely. And I'm trying to find an article. It was one that I read like maybe like a week or so now. Like, I don't know, all the days are blending together. Um, I don't know what the weekend versus the days of the week are anymore, which is odd. But there was a an article I read that talked about the importance of maintaining a routine while everything is happening. Um, and basically, it just kind of talked about like your brain craves routine, like as much as you don't realize that you create routines in your daily life, you definitely notice when they've been disrupted. And so it's important to create some kind of routine in your life so that you have like that satisfaction and that like comfort of knowing what's going to happen next. So like kind of like I was saying before, like the stress of not knowing what's happening, and what might happen in the future, I think is what's really getting to people right now. And not knowing what the future will hold. And so, like, having some kind of routine, even if it's as small as, like, you get up every morning and you make your bed and then you make breakfast. Like, if those are the only two things that you accomplish throughout the day, then that's still better than not doing those things, like wallowing in, oh my god, what's going to happen in the next couple of days, like what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, is everything going to go back to normal eventually, like not focusing so much on that and just making sure that like you have some kind of grounding factor in your life. And I think that's what routine does for people, is it provides them like a foundation to start, or to have the rest of their day be based on. And so for me, that's kind of what I've been doing, is I've been waking up every morning, making my bed and making a cup of coffee. Like if I don't do anything else that day, then that's fine, but at least I know that I accomplished those two things that I set out to do. And so like I've done it every day for probably the past 3 weeks that I've been home, um, making sure that I'm getting up, getting a cup of coffee, and, getting to work. And that routine, it has become routine at this point, um, because it'll take a little bit to get to that routine space, but um, it's definitely helped me kind of stay grounded in everything, like knowing that like no matter what happens today, I will wake up tomorrow and I will make my bed and make a cup of coffee. Like those are the things that are kind of keeping me sane right now.
And just so we're clear, that's decaf coffee.
Oh
Um,
yeah, decaf
for all
coffee.
you non-caffeinators out there, standing strong. Very few of us. Have to announce, shout out to Jess. We got her on that decaf train.
Hell yeah, there we go.
Much as she hates it, she loves it deep down. She feels better, and it's good for her soul. So, um, yeah, and I think the biggest piece too, like as we transitioned, the biggest thing for me is being mindful of the things that I can and can't control. I can't control um, what's going on in the government, what they're going to decide, what they're going to say we can or can't do. I can't control what we're going to do at work, how we're going to, how the work's going to look or what it's going to be like the next couple weeks or months. But, like I can control like my attitude, I can control my routine, my day to day, with the exception of, having to obviously work from home. It's not like freedom or whatever, but it's like I can control what that looks like. I can control my workspace. I can control my attitude, my mentality, you know what I'm exposing myself to, what I'm filling my mind with. And so I try to be conscious of that. Like I don't even look at the news. I don't like I'm not looking at updates and looking at what's the latest death toll or what's the latest infection count or whatever it may be. Like I was talking to my mom the other day, and she was like, "Oh, like I haven't got to look. But have you seen like what? Do you know what the most recent updates with the numbers up here in Flagstaff?" And I was like, "No, like I haven't paid attention to it. Not that I'm like one of those people that's just like ignorant and like I don't care about it. It's just like I don't like I know if I start to check those and I constantly become obsessed with the idea of like making sure I have the latest update, making sure I have, the latest count, latest thing, it's just going to start to add to stress. And I don't need to know how many people are getting infected out there. Like it's like obviously, it's terrible. And I genuinely feel for those people and like they're losing loved ones or whatever it may be. But like, in my mind, in terms of how I'm able to kind of maintain composure and things like that, is like I don't sit there just staring at the news all the time. And and I try to monitor like what I'm exposing myself through, throughout the day. And I mean, granted, if it's big enough news to where I need to know about it or whatever, I mean, chances are I'll find out somehow, some way or the other. But I'm not going to go out there and actively seek and constantly refresh and check and just make sure I'm staying up to date with all the latest, because there's a lot of that negative side of the media where they're instilling more fear than they are, actually informing the public um, on the things that are going, on around us. And so I think it's just important to kind of figure out, okay, here's the things I can control, here's the things I can't control, and really focusing on the things you can. You can't control whether or not you're going to lose your job or you've already lost your job and you can't get it back. But you can control, how you're going to respond to that. If you do have any income coming in, you can respond what you're going to do with that. Not panic, not dig yourself into a hole and panic, because we don't make good decisions when we're like that. And so that's just, I mean, those are just things that I try and kind of stay mindful of, that I find that really help me to not, start to get overwhelmed with everything and, um, falling into patterns that I'd normally fall into.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like, I've definitely taken to not looking at the news regularly anymore. Like when all this first happened, I was kind of trying to keep up with it just so that I could gauge like maybe when we were going to start, working from home, like when that pivot was going to come, like trying to anticipate when I needed to be prepared for that mentally. But since then, like really like focusing on those things like you were saying, like focusing on those things that I can control, and like I can't control how many people are, getting infected and stuff like that. But and the other thing too is like understanding the situation is like as we test more and more people, like obviously the numbers are going to go up, right? Like there's no way for us to know like how many people have it like total right now, and then we're adding to that total. Like of course there are people who are going to have it and we haven't tested them yet, like with the incubation period of the virus right now that we know of. Like yeah, there are going to be people who have it that don't know, and like just understanding that like the numbers are going to go up and they're going to keep going up, and it's going to look like it's getting worse before it gets better, but you can't control that, and so you can't dwell on it. And kind of like you were saying before, I liked how you were saying like the media throwing things out of proportion and stuff, and like I understand like wanting to make sure that people are informed and everything, and I think that that's like the main job of the media. I'm not like a journalist by any means, but like that should be the main goal of the media is making sure that the public are informed um, in un, in an appropriate way. And I think that a lot of people are scared right now, and focusing on the different news articles that are talking about this is how many people died, this is what's happening in New York right now, where it's kind of like it's kind of the worst part of it is in New York right now with everything that's happening with them. And so I think like choosing to not necessarily be ignorant of it, but just choosing when is a good time to consume that information is important. Like for me, like I'll look once a week. Maybe I'll look like twice a week if I like hear something like somebody tells me something like, "Oh, did you see this news article or whatever?" And I'll go look just to like, try to make sure that there's validity to what they're telling me, like trying to make sure that the information that I'm getting is actually accurate. But beyond that, I've tried really hard to kind of distance myself from the news media a little bit, and just from news updates about everything that's happening in general, because it's so easy to fall down that hole of like the world is going to hell in a handbasket and there's nothing I can do about it. And you start feeling really hopeless. And that's where that downward spiral comes for me, at least, is like, I can't do anything to help these people. I can't change the situation at all. Um, and that really like breaks my heart, is that I can't like do more to help these people.
And I think that like the powerful piece of that too is like if you're in a spot where you can, like anything helps. It makes the difference, and it makes you know something as little as like $100. Can make the whole difference to somebody in a time like this. And so I think on the opposing piece to that, if you're in a spot financially where you can help others out, or not even just financially, just with your time or things like that, like um, with certain people or certain members of the population or the elderly population, being at higher risk, or not you know wanting or being able to get into the grocery store, like you could do your neighbor a favor, and as you're going about your daily, or not your daily, your weekly um, grocery shopping and grabbing stuff from the store, you can you know reach out to your neighbor, reach out to someone who may be either immunocompromised, or may actually be like completely terrified to go into the store because of what's happening. And like I can tell, and I can I know how that feeling is just like not even those that are like immunocompromised, but those that are like emotionally compromised, or like emotionally hijacked by it. Like I remember like at my worst last summer, like being at the point where like I felt like I basically could not go into the store. And at that time, like, we didn't have a pandemic going on. We didn't have like this crisis going on around us. And so, maybe it's someone who, maybe is just dealing with some things, and they don't have, that they're struggling to get out, or they're, you find that they're not able to get to the grocery store. Maybe it's just, hey, is there anything I can pick up for you? Things like that. And so I think that really helps.
Yeah, definitely like taking care of each other right now, I think is a really important thing. And then you were kind of mentioning like just the smallest things that you can do. Like I've been kind of struggling at work, like making sense of my job. Like, where we're working right now, it's not necessarily like an essential. So it feels a little odd to be having to do the job that we're doing right now while all of this insanity is happening. And like it's a weird reminder that like the world doesn't stop spinning just because there's this pandemic happening. And like I've had to try to find like logic and reason um in like the work that we're doing. And like even if everything that you're doing every day is just like filing paperwork to make sure that your company is still functioning, like that is still important. I was watching a podcast. There's a guy who has been on Joe Rogan a couple times. His name is Jocko, and he's talked about like he's like been in the military for a majority of his life, and he was talking about how like when he got to be in charge of like a platoon of soldiers, he had to like file all this paperwork, and he kept finding himself like not being able to focus on the paperwork because he was always worried about like something else, like that mentality of like this paperwork isn't important, um because there are so many other things that I could be doing that are more important right now. But really, at the end of the day, like if you're in that position, he was saying like that paperwork is still important. Like just because you don't think that it's important doesn't mean that it's not important to this to the grand scheme of things. Um and like just doing the things that you can, and if that means like that you're just filing paperwork for the company that you're working for, or you're just making phone calls for the company that you're working for, like that's still helping something, right? That's still contributing towards the greater good of of the world, right? Like you're still contributing to something at the very least. And so just kind of holding on to that is another thing that I've had to do, is kind of making sense of the job that we're doing. Like we still have to provide these services for these people that we're helping, and I still have to be there to answer questions, and I still have to be there to troubleshoot the problems that they're experiencing, because like the world didn't stop just because this happened. Like the world is still spinning around, and there are still things that need to get done, especially if we expect to have any kind of normal society in the future. So, um, I guess for me, just trying to find like taking comfort in the mundane, I guess.
Yeah, and so I mean, on that topic of working from home and everything, like I have to, like how I've been handling it is like, in the midst of feeling like, it almost feels like I almost feel guilty for being considered essential, and there's tons of people out there who are actually essential to sustaining, like healthcare workers and doctors and um, people in those types of industries that are literally putting their lives on the line to keep fighting for people to treat them and help them and care for them. And so it's like, I have to remind myself, I'm grateful to have this job. I'm grateful to have a job that I can, work from home. And so I constantly have to remind myself in those types of situations. And so I think when I start to, feel a little sluggish or feeling like a little bit of a slump or whatever, when I am working from home, kind of reminding myself of that, getting a little bit of a reality check, and um, kind of being thankful for that. But on a little bit of a separate note, like this idea of this social distancing, how do you think you've been handling these unprecedented times?
So in terms of the social distancing, like it's weird for me because I'm an introvert, like 100% I'm an introvert.
You've been
Um
doing this for years.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because, like, you would think that this is, like, my go-to mode, but it's I saw not to, like, quote a meme, but I saw this meme the other day, and it was like,
You definitely quote a
um,
meme.
being
That's a
well,
thing.
being told to stay home when like, when you already stay home and then being told to stay home, it hits different. Which is totally true. Like, I normally stay home all the time. Like, this is my everyday. Like, I would prefer to be home over, like, I don't know, going out and partying with people or something like that, right? Like, that's my go-to mode for everything. But being told to stay home is so much different. Like now, oh, well, now I can't be outside. So so now I want to be outside. It's just really bizarre. It's a really bizarre like thing that's happening, I think. And I think that's why a lot of people are struggling, is because like, you know that you have to stay inside. Like that that's the best thing that you could probably do right now, is just, stay inside and just hang out and it'll be okay. But it's so hard to do that when I think humans are just rebellious in general. And it's kind of like your parents are like, okay, you have to stay inside now. And you're like, no, I don't want to stay inside. I don't want to do this. But like in your heart, that like that's what you should probably be doing. Um, but yeah, it's different when you're being told to stay inside, I guess. But um I think I'm doing okay with it. Like I do miss I never thought I would say this in a million years, and our supervisor's probably going to give me so much crap for it, but like I do miss physically going into the office. As much as it's odd to say those words, like I've always been like, oh, I could totally work from home. I could totally do it. It'd be fine. But like actually working from home is so much different than what I thought it was going to be. Not that like I guess right now it's a little bit different because, we actually can't go outside, but if I were working from home in like my own business or something like that, then it would probably be a little bit different. But um I don't know, like I think I'm doing okay with that. I do miss seeing my coworkers though. I miss seeing my friends. I do miss like having human interaction. Um and so I think like it's important to figure out other ways to have human interaction. Like um we've had we've done like Zoom happy hours before. Um, I'm working with our supervisor to kind of do like a remote retreat for our office right now. So he's asked me to see if I can find some kind of like game that we could play or some kind of like trivia thing that we could do remotely so that we can kind of just decompress and have some time to hang out with each other and connect and stuff like that. But it's definitely been an odd adjustment to just constantly being home.
Yes, I think for me, like the biggest piece with like the social distancing and everything is like, I'm a pretty social person, and so like I genuinely enjoy like socializing with coworkers and friends and family, and Jess and I had to cancel some trips and things like that. We were planning on going to San Diego and things like that, and so it's like, you know, something you kind of took for granted before. Like, I'm an extrovert by nature, but like there's definitely a time so I just don't feel like doing anything or I don't feel like going anywhere. And so a night in is like the new norm now. And so it's weird been like it's been weird adjusting to that. And so like it's that kind of like thing you were talking about earlier, like like not being able to do it. Like before it was always an option and I chose to maybe stay in or hang out or whatever it may be, like, but now that you like can't, and it's like you're not allowed, is like a whole different ball game to it, and so it's weird. And I think I like I'm excited to be able to get out and like hang out with people again, and like not have to be secluded to my house all the time, and like you know gear up to get to the grocery store or whatever, and like like I remember, like you would come over to record, or you'd come over and do homework, and so like we'd like do like even something like, especially with summer coming up, like barbecues and things like that. Like it's just like a weird, it's like weird that you like we can't do that now, like unless you're confined within your own house, your own space or whatever. And so it's just like interesting and been a weird adjustment, just because I mean in our lifetimes it's something that's never happened. Like we've never not been able to go out and about, and there's never been a point in history really, or at least, well, not history, but like in my lifetime, where you're like sporting events, or all of them are canceled. There's nothing to watch. There's nothing to go to. There's they're having, like, I'm sure it's completely different for them too. They're like having to slow down a bit, but um it's just a weird time, like with that whole social aspect, like concerts and things like that, and these things where people normally go, and like it's crazy to see how it's affecting just like everybody, like even to the point, like all the way down to like I don't really watch much live TV or anything, but like live TV, reality TV, like they're all stopping. Like actors, actresses. I was actually thinking about this the other day, like what's gonna happen with um like how a movie takes like a couple years to record and things like that, and so it's like I wonder what's gonna happen now because they're not able to be on set right now, they're not able to record, and so it's like a weird pause in society. But yeah, I mean, I think the social distancing aspect for me, like kind of like what you said, like genuinely you like stay in and hang out. Like me, like if I had the choice, most cases I'd want to go out and hang out with friends or do whatever. But now that we like can't, it's like a weird. It's just weird. And so like it's taken some getting used to, and working from home like at first was really weird, and I was like, this, I feel like it's a day off but I have to be glued to my computer, and it just felt awkward, like, and I didn't really understand it, I didn't like, but now that I've done the routine and kind of stuck with it a little bit, and like it's weird to say that it's becoming the new norm. And so I don't know, it's gonna be weird to be like actually be able to go out and like see people again and not like have to wear masks and feel like we're in like a zombie apocalypse like movie. Um yeah, it's just a strange time.
Right? It's super weird, and like you were saying, like, um, it is gonna be interesting to kinda see how this impacts society as a whole later. Like you were saying, like, reality TV is canceled, and, like, I guess it's not necessarily reality TV, but, like, I watch, like, talk shows every once in a while, and, like, seeing them transition to YouTube and seeing how they're doing it in, like, empty studios, or they're doing it with, like, um very minimal, it's just one person who is doing this thing, or who is, like, recording the talk show. It's just really interesting to kinda see that is happening, and, like, see the impact of everything on just, like, how we're functioning as a whole, I guess.
Yeah, so I know I mean both of us have kind of been affected by it. Like with Jacob getting his hours reduced substantially, and well, not hours but like his pay reduced, and then Jess's hours is they're basically cut in half. Um like how have you been handling that aspect to it?
Well, I mean, when he first told me that they were, so he works in a grooming salon. He's a dog groomer. Um, when he first told me that they were, like, trying to shut down the salon, I, like, panicked because we've had to live off of my income, just my income before, and it was not a great time. Um, it was definitely a struggle, and, like, there have been times in my life where I've had to pick, like, am I gonna pay my electricity bill, or am I gonna buy groceries this month? And eh, having to deal with that, and realizing that we were kind of like, we'd been doing really great financially wise, right? Like, I have enough in savings to kind of float us for a couple months if I had to. Like, I've had to dip into it a little bit with his reduction in pay because he's not earning commission anymore, but um I mean, it hasn't been nearly as bad as it could, right? Like, he hasn't completely lost his job, which I'm so incredibly thankful for. Like, I I don't know what we would do if he had lost his job entirely, or if they had shut down the salon entirely. And so, like, with that, I had like a PTSD moment almost, of like going back to that moment of like, crap, now I'm gonna have to figure out, like, what bills am I gonna pay? Like, do I have to pick now? Am I gonna have to, like, make the choice of, like, do I start reducing the things that we're buying? Am I, gonna have to start relying more heavily on things? We're gonna have to, start, like, conserving more things, like how is this going to work? And then when, he we have been able to make it work, and it hasn't been not like necessarily as bad as it could have been or as it has been in the past. That definitely like alleviated a lot of my worry, but it's still scary to think that like at any time we are like one crisis away, or like one of us losing our jobs away from not having enough money to pay our bills all the time. And that is horrifying. Like that terrifies me. I'm so scared of that. I think that's probably one of my biggest fears, is not being able to, make the household that I live in function properly. Um and so I have had to kind of deal with some of those more like PTSD moments of like, what am I going to do if like I can't pay for things anymore? Like we started looking at like, maybe we have to drive for Postmates, maybe we have to get second jobs, like maybe we have to do this, maybe we have to do this other thing. And like in the back of my head I know that I have a savings plan, right? Like I have a savings. I've built up enough to where we do have enough to pay for things, and I'm lucky that I've been kind of on top of it enough to pay for things like a month in advance, and so we're ahead a little bit, but I know that a lot of people don't have that. And like I know how scary it is to not have that option of being able to pay for things in advance and not having a savings account to like fall back on. Um and so it was a really tough, like week or so that we kind of had to wait and see what they were deciding to do about, the grooming salon, and see, if they are going to keep it open or if they are actually going to reduce the hours or whatever. um and so we've kind of had to had to deal with that, but I think for the most part we're okay right now. um we'll have to see. We'll definitely have to see kind of what happens in the next weeks. But I know with like a lot of people are looking forward to that stimulus package that they're sending out, and we definitely are. Like there are some things like, if this continues through the summer, we're definitely going to have to reassess like how we're going to start paying for things, because with his reduction in hours he basically got his pay cut in half. And I know that that's not, completely gone. It's not like he completely lost his job, and I know that he's fortunate to still have a job, but it definitely makes it a lot more difficult to pay for things, and to make sure that we have enough money to, make our household function. So
Yeah, for us, and so we've been the last couple months we have been doing the financial peace university or whatever. So we've been kind of really being intentional and sticking to a tight budget, and um, working on getting out of debt. And um, now, since recently getting engaged, now we're saving for a wedding on top of all that. And so when we heard that she was going to be, you know, losing some hours, it kind of came in like different phases through the course of like 3 or so weeks, and there was a lot of uncertainty of whether or not it was going to affect her or not. And then, so now it's pretty ingrained to where she's really getting her hours cut in half. And so, what seemed tight before is just even tighter now. And so it's like, now, I mean, like now, obviously, I'm thankful to, be in a spot like where at least, our income, like yours and mine, is stable for now. And like, we're able to work without reduction in hours. We're working from home and things like that. So I'm super grateful for that. But like, in the same sense, it's like caused a lot of, not a lot of stress or anything, but because we've talked about things, we've gotten on a plan, a budget of getting out of debt and being intentional in the last couple months of, needs versus wants, and stashing away money, and, really taking care of our needs and things like that. And so it's, it's almost like the last couple of months were preparing us for something like this. And so I'm super grateful and thankful that we did start doing that, just because it's helped out a ton. But I mean, that being said, it's like, you know, life happens, things happen, and it's this is a time where we've kind of had to put a pause on some of those things that we were doing really good and getting out of debt and saving for our wedding. And so now that she's, seeing the her hours are cut in half, we're having to kind of reassess and adjust our budget a little bit. And something they really talk about in the Financial Peace University thing is, like, especially during these times, if you've lost your job or your income is not stable right now, the big thing that they emphasize, is, whatever income you have, is you want to focus on your budget, and you want to really get it down, down to the T, and focus in on covering your four walls. The four walls that keep your house going. So you got your food, you got your shelter, you have your transportation, and then you have your utilities. And so really focusing on those, regardless of how much income you're losing or whatever. And so we've kind of been, really thinking about that. And when you really crunch down the numbers and things like that, obviously, we're gonna be okay. Things are tight, and we're having to make some necessary adjustments as we go, and some unforeseen changes. And we were super stoked in trying to meet our trying to meet our wedding goals and the budget savings for that. And it sucks to have to put a pause on that for now, but it's, at least, we know we're going to be able to cover our four walls. And so it's like that thing that you were kind of saying, that PTSD type moment where, you're having to choose, like, okay, what am I gonna not pay this month, that I can afford to not pay, or, and I think it's really important in those times, if that's something that's happened to you, you're losing your job, or you've already lost it, or unstable income, really that information, that piece that Dave Ramsey and his team kind of talks about as the four walls. And so, yeah, I mean, that stimulus package definitely helps out. And it's interesting that something like that is even getting approved in today's society. Because you would always think, like, oh, it'd be nice to have the government just fork over. So it's like interesting to see that this is actually happening. But um, and so I think it truly will help a lot of people out. It's like a nice little um, I mean, it is like a little, um, not necessarily like a bonus or whatever, but it's like something nice to, like, supplement some loss of income or whatever for now. And I think it really can help a lot of people. And so we're um, looking forward to that, and helping, just helping cover some of our savings or things like that we may be um, having to cut out for now. And so it's nice to at least see something like that coming, and that kind of transition into um, our last piece here is, like, with everything and all the chaos that's insinuating with the media and how they're hyping it up, with just everything that's going on, it's almost like it's perceived as this, like, negative. Like, you think of the coronavirus, you think of everything that's going on, you immediately, just your mind jumps to like a negative mindset, negative mentality about it. And so I think it's important to kind of focus on some of the good things that are happening um, in this world around us, and in these times it seems so negative and so bad, and so, like, it's easy to just fall into that pit of, like, oh, this sucks. Like, you constantly feel like depressed and upset, and there's nothing to be looking forward to, and things like that. And so the next piece, we kind of just want to shed some light and talk about some of the good things that we found in what's going on today.
Yeah, and I think, kind of going off of that a little bit, is it's really good to focus on the positive right now. We kind of mentioned it earlier, but, like, making sure that you're not hyper focused on all the negativity that's happening in the media right now. Um, I think something that I really appreciate is the um, I I'm probably gonna mess up his name. John Krasinski, the guy from The Office. He started his own like YouTube channel for like good news that's happening in the world. And I was kind of watching that a little bit the other day. He had Steve Carell on there, and it was just like a cute little thing that they were doing. But I think it's important to focus on the good things that are happening. Um, I think one of the main highlights of that for me is seeing the positivity around all of the healthcare providers that are like out there on the front lines, like working super, super hard to protect everybody and make sure everybody stays healthy and treat those who are affected by the virus and everything. There was a news article about how all the people in New York, there are just like so many people in their apartments who were, as soon as the shift change happened, they all went outside and they started cheering for the healthcare workers, and that was just kind of a nice moment of like, while we're all inside trying to stay safe, they're out there, putting themselves in harm's way to try to help combat this thing that's happening. So, um, holding on to positive things like that, I think is really important right now.
Well, and another thing too is like the adoption rates for animal shelters and those types of services are, normally on a given day they're in most cases overcrowded and understaffed or underfunded and things like that. And so it's like, um, we found an article where, during the coronavirus, like the pet adoptions and um, animals being adopted from these shelters are like astronomically high. Like I think it was up, something like tenfold. That it's, and so it's good to see that. It's like in the midst of this panic, this chaos, people are home more, and so it's like, they're able to not only find, a little friend, a little furry friend to spend time with and take care of while they're home, but it's like, it's taking a load off those shelters that were, just, I mean, it's pretty sad to see, like normally how overpopulated those animal shelters are, and the consequences and the things that they'll have to do, to just stay afloat, and turn some animals away and things like that. And so it's nice to see that, while it sucks, with people staying home all the time, and so, I encourage you, if you do got a little furry friend, you know cherish that time with them. It's been nice to, kind of be home. And I mean, my dog's like super, like, he was super confused at first, like why are you here? Like normally I'm sleeping right now and you're here. And like, and I would come, I would go, and then like we'd do like half days, and then like now like it was like we were fully remote, and so he was like super like weirded out with me being home all the time. And like, and so now that it's happened a couple weeks now, like he's getting used to it. And so it's like interesting to see how he is, all day and stuff. And it's kind of fun just hanging out with him. And it beats, being at home by myself, like um when Jess is at work, because she's when she is working, she's still physically going in. And so, it's nice to have a dog around. And I mean, dude's going to be traumatized when we have to actually go back into work, because then he's just going to be like, what the heck? You're like messing with my emotions now. But yeah, so, I mean, it's neat to see that, people are adopting dogs and, giving them nice homes and things like that. And, with all the kids home, things like that, like in this time, like, it's not like it's your traditional animal adoption and then the dog spends most of its days, or the animal or the cat or whatever it may be, spending most of its days alone, and then nobody's like really taking care of it. It's a time where families are together, and so it's interesting to see, that positive aspect to it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, my dog is so confused as to why I've been home. He, being deaf, he's very needy, and so like he hates it when I go to work, and so when I was staying home all the time, he like he, you know, loves it. He loves it when I'm home. And so like when I've been home the past, I think we're going on our 4th week here, like he's absolutely loved it. I know he's so confused because every morning he like looks at me like he's waiting for me to get ready, and then he'll go and like he usually like sits by the door so I can like take him out and go potty and stuff. And so he kind of knows like my normal morning routine, but we've like kind of thrown our regular morning routine out the window. And so he like is super confused as to why I'm like not doing things when I'm supposed to be doing them. Like I'm taking him out earlier than I normally do, or excuse me, I'm, taking him out earlier than I normally do, or I'm taking him out like at weird times of the day. Like I'll take him out at 11 when I'm just home doing my lunch hour, or I'll take him out at 1. Like he's loving it, but I know that he's super confused.
And then another positive is the stimulus package. Like that's actually interesting, just because it's something we've never really thought would get approved, or and so somehow it is, and um, looking forward to that. And like I said, I think it can really help a lot of people out. But the student loans getting waived, and those payments not being due till September, and the interest rates being waived to zero until September as well. I think that's like super key, especially for Jess and I, as we're working on paying debt and things like that. And, um, while I'm still in school, and like my loans weren't due, already anyways, but like the interest rate's nice to not have to know that I'm accumulating it right now. But, with her, um, we've been actively paying hers. And so it's nice to have kind of that little bit of a break, or a little bit of leeway, knowing that we don't have to pay them. There's not a penalty for not paying it during this time. And so it's just kind of one of those things, when you're taking in consideration, okay, what do I need to pay? It's not like that's one of your monthly bills. It's going to be like, there's a huge penalty if you're not paying those. And so I think that is um, another positive aspect to this time.
Oh, absolutely. And I think like the fact that there are a lot of um there are just a lot of companies in general that aren't requiring payment. So like, like they're not making you pay like your electricity bill right now, or they're not making you pay like your car payment. I know those have been kind of put off, and like credit card payments and stuff like that. And like while it's probably better that you pay them, like if you can't afford to pay them right now, at least you have that peace of mind of knowing like, I can actually choose now what I pay. So if you needed to actually make that decision, like I was kind of faced with, I was talking about earlier, like if you had to actually make that decision, it's going to be easier because now you actually have like, okay, well, I'm not going to get penalized if I don't pay my electricity bill, or I'm not going to be penalized if I don't pay my car payment, but I could pay, I could choose to pay my water bill, or I could choose to buy groceries, or I could choose to, do whatever I need to do with that. And so I think that that's just a really great thing um, that's happening right now. Another really great thing I think that's happening is the people who are just kind of banding together to volunteer. I know that there's been a lot of people kind of volunteering to, make dinner or make lunch for the healthcare workers, or like helping in like food kitchens and like pantries, food pantries and stuff like that for the less fortunate. So the people who are really struggling to buy groceries even, or who can't necessarily um, they don't have enough income to actually handle those four pillars of your home life, that you were kind of talking about before. And I think that that's really great, is to really see the community come together. I know a lot of places here in town where we are, um, they work together to um, start helping the hospital here. So anytime that somebody buys like a plate of food or something like that, they'll donate a plate to the hospital. So if you go downtown and you buy like a dinner, they'll donate a dinner to the healthcare workers at the hospital, which I think is really cool. Um, it's, you know, they're they're doing the best they can to try to keep business happening, but it's nice to see that they're also thinking about um they're also thinking about the healthcare workers and kind of contributing to that greater good. So
So, as promised, we like to end each episode with a quote. Um, and I mean, this quote we found, and I was just like, wow, this is like perfect for this episode and this idea of, controlling only what you can control, and if it's beyond your um, realm of what you can do, then that's okay, and so the quote comes from Art Williams, and it says, all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. And I mean, I think that speaks so much truth in itself, during these times, and these stressful last couple weeks, and stressful foreseeable future for the next several weeks or several months or however long this is going to last. Again, we don't know. It's okay. It's good to have estimates. It's good to have kind of an idea of how long this is going to last, but at the end of the day, there's things that are beyond our control. We can't, like, we can't be worrying and freaking out like, oh, like, are they going to come up with a vaccine soon enough, or things like that. It's like, that's beyond your control. There's doctors, there's tons of people out there, working hard every single day, to try and put an end to this, or find a way to mitigate it, and to calm it down. And so it's like, really understanding those aspects of your life, that you can do and that you can control. Um, I mean, it's made a difference in my mentality, my mental health, my attitude the last couple of weeks. And I mean, when we found this quote, I was just like, that's the one. It's like it speaks like perfectly for what the message we're kind of getting across for this episode.
yeah, absolutely. And I think like this quote is really powerful for me because when I was going through all that stuff with my mom and everything that happened after that stuff with my mom, that's really like the mentality that I kind of held on to for a long time, is that like what I'm doing now is enough because it's the best I can do right now. And if that's the best that you can do, then that's totally fine. Um Kind of like I was saying before, like making sure that you're, you know, taking care of yourself and just doing the smallest things to do that. So, you know, if it's getting up every morning and it's making your bed and that's all that you do all day, then that's still better than what you were doing before. Um, it's not a it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And just kind of taking the time to take care of yourself and do the little things for yourself, I think will go a long way in the long run for your mental health. And so it's okay to not be okay right now, and just making sure that you're, you know, taking those baby steps towards being better, or just towards maintaining whatever you can, um, is just all that you can do, and that is totally okay right now.
All right. We hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. We hope that, everybody's staying safe out there, and, you know, being mindful of your mental health during this time. It's easy to fall into, you know, pits and like negative mentalities and mindsets during these times, with everything else going on around us. And so, be sure to take time for yourself. Try and stay positive. Try and find, some light or some bit of positivity that you can focus on throughout the day. I mean, everything is pretty chaotic and crazy right now, and by no means is it, is it a perfect world? Is it a perfect, like, you're not going to find perfect peace or anything like that, but anything to help you, be a little bit better than you were yesterday. Waking up today and saying, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to, anything, any step you can take in the right direction, um, during these troubling times. And so, that being said, we'd appreciate if you guys would give us a follow on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. We'd also love if you would leave us a review. That helps us to be able to reach more people, and share this podcast um, with others. And so, um, yeah, leave us a review, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. Um, and we promise to keep working diligently to produce content during this time and getting these episodes out for you guys to listen to and stay updated, and let us know how you guys are doing. DM us on Instagram and send us an email, and we love to chat and get to know you guys a little bit. And but yeah, other than that, thanks for listening, and tune in next time for another episode of The Disconnect.